Hello there, YouTuber. CD Mangaka here, doing another little episode of my recap of the World's 2015 League of Legends Championship. That's probably the worst way to put that all together, but you get what I mean with that. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started on into these crazy wild games that we had today. There's a lot of upsets coming on out within these lineups. A couple more things that we got to see is regarding to some meta picks, some pretty okay games, and some really good games today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pull up our first game of the day, which isn't going to be necessarily a good one, and this is just the darkest timeline for LPL fans because this is going to be TSM versus LGD. And TSM surprisingly walks away with a win here. So here we go. This is the team stats for you. And this game is the second game that we get to see Mordekaiser use, and it is going to be in TSM's hands. So while it's not as snowballed quite as well as the H2K game with it, in part because it's a little more of a competitive game than H2K versus Bangkok Titans, this is a game where we really get to see the power of the Mordekaiser Siege when he's paired up with a little more wave clear coming out of his mid lane and his jungle primarily. So LGD, we have to talk about them because this is a team that was one of the favorites to come out and win the World Championship. They were expected to do relatively well in these groups, against the likes of TSM, against the likes of Origin. In context of the last time that we saw these teams a month ago, it seemed like an easier ride for them, but they have really, the whole team has earned what we joke as the Dade Awards, as in teams that looked really good regionally, then they show up at Worlds, and then that they just completely fall flat on their face, and they don't perform at the level that we saw of them within their own home region. LGD as a lineup seems to be taking away this award home in spades, really. There's like no other competition for it. They are 0-3 in the first half of the group stages. So when we look at the approach coming out of these games, once again we see Team Solomid taking on the tried and true method of dealing with LGD, which is you ban away the Lee Sin, you ban away the Rek'Sai, forcing TBQ onto junglers that he's uncomfortable with. Now LGD, seeing that TSM is just probably going to first pick the Elise anyway, don't ban the Mordekaiser. They ban the Elise instead, which I don't necessarily agree with that. Santorin doesn't really put out like the best numbers on Elise. I think Gragas was a better pick for him overall anyway in this particular game, so a little questionable from LGD, and they really seem to not be knowing how to handle this particular situation for them. They don't seem to have a response for it, and they don't know how to come up with this identity. Now, initially, LGD have a really good drafting plan against the Mordekaiser pickup. They begin to take a lot of kite. The Lulu is still open in this case, so they take that in the second rotation, and they lock in Imp's Kalista as well. Later on in the draft, they grab a Nunu for TBQ once the Gragas is taken away. Now, Nunu, fairly simple champion to play, not really mechanically intensive. There is still some positioning mistakes with TBQ in this game, as well as PYL, who goes for a rather unique pick with brand support. Now, the brand support in terms of damage works out well for LGD. He actually does more damage than, I believe, who was it in particular? I want to say Mordekaiser. Yeah, he did more damage than the Mordekaiser in this game, actually, looking at the match history, if I'm remembering that correctly. But he gets picked off way too many times. He eats these death sentences from the Thresh, and this just completely gives TSM a free engage on them and an advantage. And overall, we really just see the cataclysmic failure of LGD as a unit. So now moving into what TSM did in this game, they actually had a really good play at the very start of the game. PYL gets hooked in lane, as I mentioned earlier, and he's immediately forced to flash. Within 5 seconds of that, Darius TP's down in the bottom lane. So he's level 3 on Darius. He's got his apprehend and all those things. And it's actually a surprising play. You know, Fusion Ha right there. It's a surprising play that I didn't expect to see out of TSM. It was very quick, it was very decisive, and it catches the bottom lane off guard, and it gets these early kills onto, I believe it was both Darius and onto the Mordekaiser. Now, it takes a while for TSM to get the Dragon and set up with that, but when they do get it, we see what this Dragon can do when champions like Twisted Fate are able to clear the waves for it, so then they're not bogging it down, they're not dealing damage to it, they're not, taking up his auto attacks. This Mordekaiser's Dragon can rip through towers when it's paired with a good sieging comp. This goes back to my point earlier with the H2K comp, where Mordekaiser doesn't make a comp good at sieging, but it facilitates siege compositions. coming into the fights in this game. Overall, this game is just like a bloody mess of team fights. And LGD has these glimpses where they're showing how good, like how strong their team fighting is, because they get into these huge gold deficits. Like, I believe at one point in the game, it comes out to be about like a 10,000 gold deficit. But they're able to make a Baron play. They're able to clean up a Baron fight, take the Baron, and then bring the gold difference to only a 5k advantage. And really in this game, the fights are dying as Imp dies. He's really putting out the only sort of damage on this team. Godvi just isn't putting out getting that damage down that he needs to with the Diana. And Imp goes for an interesting build. He builds a Ruinance first, something that we haven't seen for a long time. This leads him to lower damage outputs in the early game. A lot of fights go his way, but don't go his way. But once he gets in some of the attack damage items, then he starts to really ramp up damage. And as long as he's alive in the team fights, LGD have a shot. LGD have a chance to get the Ren resets out. But unfortunately for Imp, he just keeps on going like too close to TSM. He gets in these melee range, allows the Darius to pull him, allows the Mordekaiser. It's Wild Turtle, mate. Like, Wild Turtle is bopping on the head, and that's like what's causing you to lose team fights. It's like, what is the storyline, you know? So overall, though, it's really kind of depressing to see LGD not show up in this way and struggling so much. Again, it's a very chaotic game. It's very messy. Both teams not really having a good sense of strategy. When it comes to the mid and late game, the team fights are messy. LG has moments where if they had like an even gold lead, they probably would be crushing these fights, but because they're so far behind, it's just not, they just can't do enough really, and TSM managed to pick up one win and send LGD down into basically last place. Now, this is going to give us some very interesting things for the groups, namely because LGD now is the likelihood of them getting out of the groups, just given on the evidence that we've seen so far, it's very unlikely just because of how poor they showed up within this first week. I disappeared like LGD's talent. There we go. Moving from discussion of the game, let's talk about what's going to have to happen for LGD to get out of groups. Right now, Origin is firmly established in first place. They are 3-0. KT Rolster is second place, 2-1. TSM is third place, 1-3. Not 1-3. 2-1, 1-2, 0-3. So it's like a perfectly mirrored bracket. So what has to happen to LGD is, first off, they have to win every single game that they play next week. They cannot drop a game to KT. They cannot drop a game to Origin. Now, let's assume that this all plays out. So Origin beats KT in the first matchup. Okay, now let's say that KT beats Origin in the second meeting coming around next week. This puts both teams at 4-2, and they both tie for the first place seeds. LGD is down at 3-3, and they don't get out. Okay, so KT cannot beat, if KT beats Origin, it's less likely for LGD to get out of the group. This is assuming that LGD can win all their games. The moment LGD loses a game, their chances of getting out of groups are done. They've just dug themselves into deep of a hole with a record of 2-4. Even with that, they're just not going to be able to get on out of this group stage. Now, with these scenarios, if KT only drops a game to Origin, then LGD is out. This is assuming that, again, LGD wins other games, so both to KT and to LGD, or Origin and LGD for KT Rolster. If Origin win the game against KT, on the other hand, rather than KT beating Origin, I don't know if I've been mixing those two up right now, but then they will be effectively 5-1. KT will be standalone 4-2. Actually, they'll be 3-3 if I recall that correctly. Yeah, they would have lost 2 games to Origin, 1 game to LGD. So then if Origin don't lose to KT Rolster and KT lose to LGD, then it's a 2-way tie between KT Rolster and LGD. They have to play a tiebreaker game. If TSM plays spoilers as well, LGD could shoot up and become the definitive second place group if Origin beats KT Rolster and if KT Rolster loses to LGD. That's what really has to happen for these guys to get out of the groups. However, the likelihood of that happening, based on what we've seen here, this is how analysis works, is very unlikely, simply because looking at the Origin KT game that we're about to talk about, and given the shape of TSM, given the shape of LGD, barring any massive recovery, any massive improvements from either side, or some like insane level of choking on the other half, there's no way that that is going to really occur. just because TSM is not going to really be able to play spoiler. I think KT and Origin are way too good for that. TSM isn't going to get the draft, so they need to really punish Origin. KT, they just outperform TSM as well. Origin does as well, by the way. They're just not going to be able to really have those opportunities to play those spoilers, so Origin has to beat KT Rolster, and KT Rolster has to lose to LGD. That's how this is going to be playing out for them. Really depressing to see a player of Imp's caliber in this position, as well as the rest of the lineup. Godfrey, Acorn, no one gives a fuck about TBQ. So let's move on to the second game of the day. Get over the sadness right now, because this, my friends, is a fantastic game. This is easily the best game of the World Championship so far. It is going to be KT versus Origin, or is it Origin versus KT? Pending side. It is KT versus Origin, KT being on blue side. All right. So we're going to go ahead and pull this up for you. Now, this is just a absolutely phenomenal game, as I've mentioned before. Unlike the TSM and LGD game, where it's more like defined by their mistakes, the team fights are breaking out. This person makes this mistake, and the team punishes it for that. These two plays, while they is this same level of punishment, it's more about the play and then the retaliation play later. This is a fantastic game where we see double teleports used to brilliant effect, where we see these teams just trading back and forth, and then it only takes one crucial mistake to completely seal the deal for Origin. Now, I think that KT did very well to go with the Olaf pick. Olaf being a pick that Fiora can kind of seem to contain but not truly handle. He's just really strong. And then KT really do a good job of making sure that Someday gets the snowball that he needs. Now, we got to talk about Xpeke right now, because Xpeke has this just innate, weird, insane ability to just show up at Worlds at this god level status, no matter how underwhelming he has been before. The plays that he makes in this game are completely ludicrous to just large degrees. It is absolutely phenomenal to see this guy play, and he really shows up Nagne in this game. Nagne being a bit of a weaker point for the KT squad, although I don't think you should have picked the Echo into the Twisted Fate. The Twisted Fate was blind picked, if memory is serving correctly, so there is that. Now, coming to the draft phase, we see KT finally doing a couple things that we haven't seen before in the group stages, which is denying Niels his Callista pickup immediately. They also take away the Braum. Origin go over standard bans, so KT's not getting their hands on the Lulu. But once again, Arrow's defaulting to his Kog'Maw. It does really good in the early game. KT does a great job of getting him ahead, getting him some kills. But again, Origin just matches them blow for blow in this game. There's plenty of dragon trading, plenty of tower trading. Let me pull everything up. So KT starts off with a lane swap to the top lane. This frees up Peekaboo to roam. Again, KT Roaster playing to their identity. He identifies where the double jungle is, coming out of Origin. And then, I mean, KT has this beautiful pathing just to immediately catch the bottom wave as Origin kind of messes up. They get Someday into it. Meanwhile, he doesn't have to burn his teleport for it. Soaz has to teleport into the lane, so there's a quick TP advantage for KT Rolster. The lane swap is just fascinating to watch in this game. And then one thing to note as well when you watch some of these plays, both teams do this invasion on the other sides. It's a very much Eastern style lane swap. And Origin, unlike KT Rolster, when it came to playing Western lane swaps, looks rather comfortable with this thing. They played it out very well. They were preparing the dives that they needed to. The only issue that they had is that Amazing doesn't really do his backing to pick up wards as he's going into the red side jungle of KT and leave a ring of vision. After you watch the two towers go down, the lanes are swapping back to something more standard. KT has the entire red side of Origin's map lit up. Origin doesn't have any wards in KT's own jungle. This enables KT to get like a 5-man gank onto Soaz and onto Mithy, getting them some early kills, largely just a result of Origin not preparing their Korean style lane swap properly in terms of vision. Amazing having a little issue with his backing. And again, we see that Snowball is getting Snowball is getting a lead. Okay, Someday is getting a lead. They're able to snowball a bit. He's able to duel. So as a lot of the times really showing his mark as one of the best top lane carries, if not the best top laner at this tournament. But again, it's Xpeke outshining Nagne. It's him getting the CS leads. It's him making the plays around the map. And again, trade for trade blows. Let me elaborate on that because I've just been saying them like buzzwords. There's a play that KT makes where they commit to the bottom lane and they get this double kill. Well, they kill the bottom lane of Origin, rather. I don't remember if it was exactly a double kill. They might have both gone to Someday. And again, they burn both teleports. They burn Nagne's, they burn Somedays. But then Origin has Soaz's and Xpeke's on double teleport as well. And they, within a couple minutes of that play, they immediately teleport to bottom lane and get a kill onto Arrow. It's just such a great back and forth trading. In the mid game, though, Origin really take a lead when KT, they're prepping the bottom lane to go siege the bottom tower. They're getting ready to set up the dragon. It's 22 minutes in. It's too early for a Baron. We don't see a lot of early Baron plays come out of Korea. Origin immediately capitalize on it. They see they're preparing for this bottom lane side. They know they're stacking on that side, so they immediately just teleport onto the Baron. They get it taken down, and this really sets them up to begin to kind of even the game out, keep it in score. Going through everything, guys. Thank you for being so patient with me. There's a lot of catch outs. There is a lot of plays. Peekaboo really showing up on his Alistar. Again, like, there's this like misstep by this guy, immediately punished, snowball into objectives. Origin and KT both do things like this. It's a fantastic game. What clinches the deal in this game, though, is one mistake from Arrow. He face checks a brush. Now, to his credit, KT Rolster is pretty sure that Origin is on the Baron at the time he was doing it. He uses Kog'Maw Ultimate, which gives vision to check the brush. Doesn't hit anyone, doesn't reveal anyone, so he assumes it's safe to walk forward. And then Origin just immediately slay him. They take the next Baron, and then they really close up the game. It's a very methodical closure. They just push down all three lanes. They're split pushing with their teleports, and then they triple inhibit him, and it's just a very, very, very concise close. Origin having amazing macro play, having a great understanding of how the different regions could play the early game out. Mountain Hermit, their coach, former analyst, has done a fantastic job with this team, and he deserves a lot of praise for making a really high caliber shot calling team out of these guys. So again, this is a great game to watch. If you need to watch any game, go watch this one. Highly recommend it, guys. So without any further ado, let's go ahead, be done with that one, and move on to the next game. IG versus AHQ. So this is in Group B, and now with AHQ, we saw them beat Fnatic in a very missed game and lose decisively to Cloud9 because they just really played bad. And IG has not been having a good time either. But in this game, we're seeing Invictus Gaming really kind of beginning just to put the brake. That sounds like such like a cliche thing to say. We really begin to see AHQ target AHQ. I think I said AHQ target AHQ. IG target AHQ in a way another team's not. We see the Fizz ban. We see a Tom Kench ban where they're getting rid of the pocket picks. They get rid of the Twisted Fate here as well. AHQ going to standard bans, throwing in an Zero to deny it from Rookie. But Rookie doesn't care. He's got his Victor. Now, Rookie has an amazing Victor. Very dominant performance coming off of that champion in the LPL regionals. It's a massive scoreline, really. We see Shen for the first time in the top lane. We see support Kennen coming out of Kitties. Kid does get Kalista, so this is going to alleviate some of the issues with them overextending. Kalista being a rather safe champion. If Kitties does get caught out, Kid can just ult him back in. And then Kakao being on Elise, so he's going for a high pressure style. Meanwhile, HQ, Westor goes to his Ahri. We see Ziv go over to a Maokai rather than picking up any other of the top lane carries. Kind of just like suggesting some other stuff. If you look at AHQ's comp, I mean, according to the analyst desk, or rather the casters who've done a lot of the research for this tournament, it's very much a standard comp that AHQ has played before, several patches ago, and I think we can see why that we don't really see these picks coming on out. It's a very messy game. Again, it's a little slower one. It's not as chaotic as the TSM LGD one. AHQ, they have this pick composition going for them, and then they're not really going for these picks. They're not controlling vision like they need to. They're not getting these fights. Meanwhile, Invictus Gaming is kind of just waffling about as well. But where they decisive win is Rookie just deals incredible amounts of damage. Team fights get grouped on up. AHQ's piling on in. He gets these huge ultimates down, and he's able to just really just do all the damage that his team needs. It's overall, again, like an okay game, but what we're really seeing here is that IG finally getting a win in the group stages over AHQ. And based on what happened with the Flash Wolves today as well, it's safe to say that the LMS region is looking really inconsistent in these best of ones. I mean, it is best of ones, so anything can happen. But it's really just upsetting to see like a team that was doing incredibly well back at home is struggling with these new meta changes, as we can see with AHQ's picks. They're playing some older stuff. They don't seem to be bringing out anything new or related to this patch, so it's really showing right now that these teams haven't really trained well enough or prepared for this particular game. There's a lot of bullying that goes on to Ziv in this game. He gets picked a lot, he gets focused a lot, and this really puts him behind on the Maokai, so he's not going to be quite as tanky. This gives some kills just around the team a little bit. And again, we just see the team fight really convincingly coming out. And it's really just based on AHQ's misplaying of the fight. They group for all the AoE damage coming out of the team. So again, it's an okay game, but we're seeing Invictus Gaming going with this. Let's target ban some of their players so they can't play anything that we're not used to playing against. Or like their best stuff. Let's really limit and show that Westor just doesn't show up unless he's on Fizz. So I don't really know what to say about these two teams. It's looking like the groups are going to be between Cloud9 and Fnatic going on out, which is going to be another game we're going to talk about in just a moment. But again, it's just kind of, the Eastern teams are having a really hard time this year. Part of it, IG has always been consistent. They have a really terrible bottom lane. HQ, they just don't seem ready and prepared for this meta at Worlds. Okay, and then, speaking of Cloud9 versus Fnatic, this game is quite bonkers. It's a mix almost between the LGD game and the Origin KT game, just because there is this pretty solid macro play coming out of Cloud9, but there's also just some really sloppy. There's a couple bad calls on both sides. There's some really sloppy play, but there's some cool flashing plays at the very least. So let's talk about this particular game. So Cloud9, they take away Rain over his Olaf. They ban away his Elise as well. So it's a similar style to what we see done against TBQ, where they're targeting the weak point, the jungle. And then they also ban away Lulu. They're not going to be putting balls on that. They have no intention of putting balls or Incarnation on that. Fnatic, they go for the Gangplank. They pretty much have to. They go for the Mordekaiser. And then they also take away Incarnation's Veigar. Him showing it early is really benefiting them. But this leads to Cloud9 basically getting comp they've always played. First off, they first pick Darius for balls. He's pretty much a vanilla pick. I know people hang on a lot, but he seems to just do really well enough. Where Fnatic really screw up here is that they basically pick a comp that is going to make the Darius pick viable, rather than picking out these comps with heavy slows, a lot of kiting potential, a lot of mobility, ways to punish him in lane. They don't. They pick a losing lane matchup. On paper, it doesn't play out necessarily that way. They pick a composition that's designed to run into the Darius, so then he's just able to sit on you and get everything done. Again, it's just really poor compositional structure given what Cloud9's coming out with, and it is also just Fnatic trying to play out a composition they had in mind rather than playing a game against Cloud9. What I mean by that is Cloud9, for this third time basically in this whole series, they played the same style of composition. Balls is on Darius. I believe he was on, or well, the other time he was Gangplank, but Balls is just on a champion that's AD that can kind of he'll just survive on with. Incarnation is on this huge wave clearing zoning mid laner, Veigar or Azir, and then Sneaky is on the Tristana to fast push down the towers. And just like we saw against the IG game, there's a point in this game where Fnatic moves onto the Baron, but then Cloud9 rotates the Tristana into the mid lane. They begin putting down the tower, and with Tristana and Azir, it's very likely that Fnatic could lose both of their towers, so they have to immediately back off the dragon. They lose the mid tower anyway. Incarnation puts the Azir passive up, keeping Fnatic, who's now up in front of their mid inner tower, locked in there while the rest of Cloud9 go rotate and take the dragon. There's also another moment where Cloud9 does a similar move, and they have Sneaky go solo the dragon. They know how to play this comp well, and teams have not been taking it away from them in this particular case. This is why best of ones are really kind of hard. Teams aren't really doing a good job of looking at what the other teams are doing, coming up with plans to counter it. Instead, they're just giving away these picks. I don't see why you don't have Febvin just take the Azir earlier in the draft, just to deny it from Incarnation. It's a safe blind pick. Febvin has a good Azir as well. You might as well take that. I want to see Fnatic take that away. Don't let Incarnation get on that Azir or that Veigar in the next particular game that these two teams play. And then we also see Elimination bust out his Morgana pick. It's been one of his best picks, but really this game has been a story of Balls just being a hindrance to Cloud9 and Elimination doing some really questionable stuff. I mean, he gets caught out and tries to execute himself all the way in the base of Fnatic, and Febvin manages to pick up the kill. He tries to come around for this flank and just manages to get turned on. His Incarnation's giving a chase later on in the game. Lemon not really having the best of positions, not really having too many, he doesn't really have any clutch plays and bindings, but he does his job. He has a couple of black shields that help out his team overall. Balls, again, Cloud9 kind of setting up to lose when it comes to the lane swap scenario. But in this case, they really set him up to win, and he drops the ball. Huni is playing on Yasuo, who his win wall doesn't do anything against Darius. Darius has a heal within his kit. He's able to force Yasuo to fight him, has the bleed damage to really burn through him. Yasuo shouldn't be winning this lane, but Balls, he gets a freeze in front of his top inner tower, so Huni has to come all the way down to farm in there, and then he manages to kill Balls with a little help from Rainover under his mid or top inner tower, rather. It's ludicrous how much that Balls cannot even like perform these basic functions, but once again, Hai has this ability to get Balls enough gold to make him just relevant within the game, and we really have to praise Hai's Lee Sin mechanics in this game. There's an engage in the blue buff area where Huni goes for the Yasuo ultimate onto Darius, but Hai kicks him back into Fnatic and completely stops that engage, saves the whole team, saves Balls, saves himself. Hai's really doing well on this Lee Sin, and they managed to even feed him a couple of kills, namely just because Huni's getting really overconfident. He has a really good dive on the top lane. He takes the kill himself. Balls is unfortunately not able to take it, but he's retaliating very well to what Fnatic is trying to do, and he's making Balls at the very least somewhat relevant and helping him recover and survive. Sneaky is capable of handling Reckles on his own. Elimination in Sneaky's laning has never really been suspect, so they're able to hold it down. Hai doesn't have to pay attention there. He has a really good identity of what he needs to do for the Cloud9 roster. So yeah, again, there's a scrap in the jungle. There's just, and Balls gets a double kill. Fnatic really just being not respectful to Cloud9 at all in the pick phase, in the gameplay. We see them get zoned off the dragon. Now, Cloud9 doesn't need Baron. They have a really strong siege comp, but they go for it anyway. And when Febvin approaches with his Orianna, they keep staying on the Baron in the Baron pit, which that's just asking for a shockwave to kill all of you. And it happens. All of Cloud9 dies. The one saving grace is that Incarnation barely managed to secure the Baron for Cloud9, so Fnatic doesn't just get that buff transfer to them and steamroll Cloud9 out of this game. That really was a moment of saving grace. From there, Fnatic does get some pressure back down on the map, but where it really begins to kind of not work so well is that Cloud9 sets up really great defensive vision. If you compare the vision between Fnatic and Cloud9, both of them have pretty much almost equal levels of aggressive vision when they have a lead and they're pressing their advantage, but Cloud9 does a way better job of keeping their jungle warded, giving vision to Fnatic when they're on the defensive, when Fnatic is an aggressor, whereas Fnatic really struggles with that, letting Cloud9 get a lot more freer play when they have the advantage. So, there's a play down in the bottom side of the map where Cloud9 tries to force a fight. They don't really get it. And then Sneaky, or rather Reckles, is able to take the top inhibitor tower. Huni teleports over rather unneedlessly. He takes the top inhibitor. And so, there's the inhibitor down. Fnatic has a lot more control coming out of this game. Cloud9 respond to this by quickly pushing the lane out, going to rush the Baron. And then they win this fight. They take the Baron. They trade about, I want to say, was it like 3 for 2? Yeah, they pick up 3 kills out of it. I think lose 1 or 2 people. Sneaky and Incarnation both make it out, and there's this really cool play where Sneaky, he escapes out the back of the Baron pit. Balls is able to, he started dealing a lot of damage at this point with the Black Cleaver. Reckles gets chunked down a bit. Sneaky's able to land a crit on him, and they blast them over into Incarnation for him to finish off. It's a very sick play. It's just a beautiful pitch home run combo by the two. Really, those two showing how they perform with these things. With this Baron, they go create more map pressure with it. They're closing in on Fnatic's base. Then there's a fight that breaks on out when Huni hits a knock-up. He goes for Balls and Sneaky. Then the ultimate, Elimination does a good job of exhausting him here, nullifying his damage. So he's able to escape. Incarnation with basically most of Fnatic's engaged down. So the shockwave went on. He just shoves them with the Azir ultimate. They're under their mid inner tower. Balls is right in there with them. He just gets all this free damage. He gets his passive stacked on everybody. And this leads to huge true damage ultimates. And at a tournament with the likes of Ziv, Someday, Smeb, Soaz, Huni at this freaking tournament, Balls is the first top laner who gets a pentakill. It's what is this world championship? I don't even know anymore. It's absolutely insane. This shouldn't be happening, but it is. We live in this reality, and it's hilarious all the way. After that very decisive team fight, we had the Incarnation very much set up for Balls to have a really cool moment. They just close out the game and they beat Fnatic. But once again, we're seeing Cloud9 basically getting the comp that they want to play. We see Fnatic having issues with Huni. Huni has been really suspect in these last 2 games. He's been overly aggressive on the Darius. We saw that in the game against AHQ. His Yasuo play as well, it just hasn't been really living up to par. He isn't really being actually suited for this meta, it almost seems like. He isn't playing the way that we're used to see him playing. And it's just really kind of just hurting down Fnatic because they keep focusing on getting Huni ahead. I think they really need to start focusing more of the resources into Feba than into Reckles. Let them be the ones you're carrying because they already are. Like, they're carrying Huni at this point. So that's where we can really learn from it. GG well played at Cloud9. 3-0ing a group that they should have been 0-3 at this point. I don't even know. I don't even know. And it's fantastic. So the next game we're going to go over fairly quickly is KOO Tigers versus CLG. Now, we saw KOO lose to the Flash Wolves yesterday, and we saw CLG pretty dominantly handle Pain, which isn't really too shocking, giving Pain as the international wildcard team. But what we really have to look at is just like what the KOO Tigers do, and this is what I'm talking about on the point of actually like just denying some of the comp that CLG's playing. In both CLG's games, Pobelder's been on Lulu. He's won his lane very hard, and he's been able just to buff up double lift to do all the carrying for his team. Zion has been a bit impactful as well with his split push pressure. Nick Smithy has been constantly ganking for Zion. So what do the KOO Tigers do? They ban away the Lulu. They, let's see. I'm trying to remember the grab first. I think they grabbed the Rek'Sai first. Pretty sure they grabbed the Rek'Sai first. We see the classic Victor pick come out of this. Pobelder decides to go for the Azir in this case. Double lift goes for the Tristana. Aphromoo comes out with his Blitzcrank, which just really is kind of bad on this one. And Gorilla counters that with the Morgana, and this is some fantastic Morgana play, by the way. And Kuro, I've already mentioned him. Smeb goes for Kennen. He hasn't played in a long time, but he really shows up here. Zion does get the counter pick with Olaf, but KOO neutralized Zion Spartan incredibly well in this game. They know Xmithy's going to be ganking for Zion Spartan, so Hojin is already down the bottom lane before Xmithy gets there to help Zion. They get a gank onto him. It doesn't really work. But then we see them reset, try again with Hojin and Gorilla, and I believe even Kuro coming on down, and they get the kill on him, and the kill goes to Smeb, and he begins to slowly snowball the lead for them. Meanwhile, Prey is on his Ashe. He's able to play around the Blitzcrank very well, and we just see like this very systematic just destruction of CLG. It's a very dominant game, and this really shows what happens when the KOO Tigers prepare for you with both how their strategy of the game, with their picks and bans in the game, and when they take you seriously. It's an absolute slaughtering of CLG, something that we weren't really expecting in this matchup. Pardon me for doing on this. This is some really good play from Smeb in this game. We see him dodge Pobelder's ultimate several times. He gets away very close with very low amounts of health, and he has these beautiful engages from the flank. This is something that we know Smeb does very well. He's a really good Riven player. So Riven, what does she do? She flanks. What does Kennen want to do? Flank the back line, get the ultimate down, and it really works. And again, this is where we see, like, I don't know why after we went with the Blitzcrank here, the Kennen was already on the board, I believe. It's like, why would you pull a Kennen into your team? Why would you even have that possibility going on? And KOO just really go on picking out members of CLG, systematically destroying them. Gorilla has some on-point bindings and black shields, denying Aphromoo any sort of pull power that he could have had with it. And again, it's just it's an absolute massacre of CLG. CLG tries to go for these plays, but KOO respond appropriately. It's complete and utter domination. This shows what happens when KOO is really serious for it. And after this, I expect them to take their losses earlier in this week, take Flash Wolves a little more seriously, make sure they don't lose to Pain, have another plan ready for CLG, or continue on with the same plan, and come out of this group in first place. CLG, I think, maybe they'll learn something from this. Maybe they'll come back in terms of what's going to happen here. But I think they'll handily beat Pain again. Maybe they can lose the Flash Wolves again. I'm not quite so sure about that. Flash Wolves looking largely inconsistent based on what just happened in the next game that's coming up. But it's really, I feel like KOO has just really established that, hey, we are the best team in this group. We just need to play like we are. And that comes from a couple of things. So the last game of the day, this one we're going to go over very briefly as well. It is the Flash Wolves versus Pain. And don't beat the Koreans, guys. It opens you up to beat Kaboom, because that's exactly what happens here. Flash Wolves beat a Korean team, so then Brazil was empowered to once again administer Kaboom. Not quite as epic as the last one, but I mean, it's still a thing. So this game, it's poor, it's slow. There's not really good snowballs coming out of it. We see a lot of whiffs. in terms of Dude's ultimates. We see Mylon go on in without any sort of backup from his team. He lands a 5-man in our ultimate while his team is 2 screens away. Like, he just pursued it purposely. It's very messy from that. The Flash Wolves, they put Stake back on the Darius. They get Maple onto the Ari. We see NL and Sword Art picking up. And, I mean, the game starts off, like, fairly even between these two. But, you know, it seems like Maple isn't used to the summer spells he's running. He gets a pick out onto Sir T, and then he burns his cleanse when there's no spells coming towards him. We assume that he thought he had Ignite, and then he's like, oh, wait, I don't have the bird, and Sir T managed to escape that gank. It's a very clumsy game overall, but what we see here is that the Flash Wolves are just really largely inconsistent. They struggled against CLG. They had a moment where they could have beaten CLG, but then they just lost in the team fights there. They were getting dominated by Ku in the early game, and then Ku overstepped, had a very poor team fight. They were able to take that one back, and then they lose to Pain Gaming in this game. It's once again very back and forth. There's some cool hooks coming out of Sword Art. He gets one on the BRT that gets Flash Wolves into the game, but there's nothing really like special to write home about. It's just the two teams fighting it on out. And again, we see the same issues from Pain that I've always been saying, where Kami really is the only one who can decently engage for the team. Mylon, he does okay, but he's not coordinated with his team, it seems like. Du just is very sloppy when it comes to his play. And again, the Flash Wolves just aren't being as punishing as they could be with some of the leads and some of the picks that they get out of this. So, ultimately, it's a very rough world so far for Taiwan and for China. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Hope that you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a couple things from it. I'm going to be doing some bot analysis over the next couple of days on my Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/CD_mangaka, all lowercase. If you want to know when those are going up, I'll be tweeting it out on my Twitter account. There will be a link to that in the description. So if you want to come join me on these things as we look at these games really in depth, I'll be looking a lot at Cloud9, probably all of Cloud9's games, actually, just to go through breaking those down. I'll probably take a couple of requests for what games you guys want me to look at. No TSM versus LGD, just saying that right now. Definitely going to look at Origin versus KT Rolster. It's just a beautiful game. Anyways, thank you guys for coming on in. Really enjoyed having you here. Really been enjoying watching these worlds so far. It's been different than what we expected, been very exciting, and looking forward to the second round of the group stage next week.